Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of our financial series. This one we're going to be calling Financial Breakthroughs. And we're joined again by the amazing.
Meten.
And I'm Gary from Alternative Interactions, and that's obviously Meten from Plutonic Planes. Um, we've got a really interesting show, and it's probably going to be a part two again because Meten's definitely going to be waffling for more than an hour. No,
Gary's
we've
gonna
got
be
really interesting. We've got some real good stuff today, actually, and actually, we're going to look back at some of the stuff. Certainly, one of the dates that we looked at previously on September the 23rd, and there was actually a happening on the date that we predicted could be or there might be issues. So fascinating stuff. So, Maten, how are you today then?
I'm doing good. Me and Gary been jabbing it up for a couple hours, getting warmed up and going over our notes. And so we're gonna get into some deep things, kind of the culmination of what we've been talking about on this series for the last three times. We're gonna reach some interesting culminations and clarity with what's going on and what we can do. So we'll have some solutions for you guys if you don't already haven't already made such solutions, from what we've already shared, that we'll get deeper into that. So looking forward to sharing that with all of you.
Yeah, yeah. We really do have some nuts and bolts on this one as well because um, obviously Maten and I have been talking before the pre-show, and we feel that although other pundits will have given you this kind of, and this isn't financial advice. Let's be very clear in the beginning of the show.
Yeah,
None of
no
what we
fun.
say is financial advice. Advice. This is just a show where we're talking, and should you decide to do something or not, it's entirely up to you. There is a disclaimer in my notes and my description. Um, Shame we have to do such things, but we do. So there we go. So as we obviously got some lot of interesting stuff to do, but one thing that I did see, and we're just going to start the show off on a little tangent because why not? I was watching the financial program the other day, and they were talking about analytics and how they analyze the markets and what they do. And what struck me, being me, and if you know me, watch my stuff, I do go about this quite a bit. Is one of the analytic systems that is used in the financial system is called the Fibonacci system, and I thought that was really interesting. In that fiat currency is a bubble on top of a bubble on top of a bubble, and if we take it the Fibonacci sequence at the point in where the Fibonacci sequence was about to burst or collapse financially, then often what we're getting at the moment is another bubble of created money put on top to keep the system going artificially, which is also a debasement of our currency or the fiat currency that we currently have. So I just thought that was quite an interesting one. That even the Fibonacci comes up through with in the financial systems, and they were talking about bubbles on bubbles. I think fundamentally the stock market, how it creates and builds, and then it then builds up again and builds again. So really interesting stuff because for those who understand what the Fibonacci is, ultimately every single Fibonacci system will collapse.
And they're all Ponzi schemes. They're all, like you said, built on bubbles, so there's no center. A Ponzi scheme is a scheme without a center. There's no base to it. There's no grounding. So everything has to come back to nothing because that's what it is.
Yeah, brilliantly put. And that is fundamentally the fiat currency that we're all under at the moment. It's a Ponzi scheme, and we will be looking into this as such. Although we have kind of covered this previously, but it's fascinating when we start looking at Ponzi schemes and the fragility of those systems and what they will do to maintain that Ponzi scheme. So, one of the first things I want to bring up is, and it's quite a hot topic at the moment, certainly in our part of the world, in Europe, um, Switzerland, Canada, is the digital ID within the banking system. And this digital ID is no more prevalent and really has hit the nail on the head. And I'm not sure timing wise, this could have been around the 20th of October as well. I should have really looked at the date of this because this again could be another precursor of the energy of the of the
What do you mean
of
the date for what? For when England
no, for
settled it?
when Vietnam did their digital ID system on the banking system.
I could do that. I could do that.
That'd be brilliant if you could, yeah, wonderful. Um, because Vietnam has gone into a system where if you don't have a full biometric digital ID, your bank account has been frozen and you have no access to it anymore. And that has affected 86 million, I'll say that again, 86 million accounts. And so what that fundamentally is a bail-in where the banking system and stroke or the government has stolen or put that money on freeze until you jump through some hoops to prove who you are. Now, I've never been to Vietnam, but I have been to Thailand, and I do know that in Thailand, access in some of the rural areas to internet, Wi-Fi, or whatever is not always the best, and certainly people aren't necessarily clued up in the ways that they should be. And that, I know it's a generalization and probably a very bad one, but I would imagine that a percentage of that 86 million would be affecting the elderly citizens of Vietnam. So, have you been able to find out when that was brought in?
So this has been going on for a while.
Has it?
Apparently, as of July, it looks like it was launched for all foreigners to have to use a level 2 digital ID account.
Wow.
The thing where they were doing in the country. So level 2 electronic ID for foreigners in Vietnam, September 5th. It's giving me different dates, but it's all this year, and it's all prior to the freezing of those accounts, which occurred in the middle of September. And it looks like those accounts that were frozen, correct me if I'm wrong, those weren't just foreign residents, those were all residents. Is that correct?
Everyone, everyone, and that was done under the prevention of fraud and such like that they always do with these things. And of
Mm.
course, what this brings up very, very clearly is the fragility of our access to banks. Now, I can recall during the Canadian trucker convoy peaceful protest that the Canadian government closed down the protesters' bank accounts who were protesting legally. I think that was a year or so ago now, maybe two, but certainly a year ago, just over. So the Canadian government closed bank accounts for peaceful protesters, and this also goes on further, and we've mentioned this previously about the Russian central bank or the Russian debt bonds that are held by Russia, certainly in the EU, where and in the UK, where those debt bonds have been frozen and the money that's been made out of those debt bonds has been transferred to Ukraine, which is a very interesting concept. So it is now becoming very, very clear just how much the banking industry is working with or for, not for, but with the governments to control via the digital ID systems that we're now seeing them trying to implement and force onto certain countries. And it's really quite concerning in some respects. However, we will be talking about solutions probably in part two, because again, this is probably going to be quite long, so there will be a part one and a part two. But we will be talking about solutions for sure and ways around controlling your money. So, do you have any thoughts on this, particularly at the moment, Meten?
A lot of thoughts, but what I'll say for now is it looks like as I investigate this right now that there is already a biometrics technology new national ID system that seems to have been implemented fully into Vietnam.
Yeah.
And so it's probably a test run, you know. It could be the first country having it. I don't know of others that have it
No, I don't.
as complete as, and it must be because what we can also do is like as we investigate into when it started, it looks like it's a model for all other countries. So this kind of lockout that occurred in the country means that perhaps there was some unruliness or there were people, citizens that were choosing not to get involved with the two-step identification or all the metrics in relationship to having a biometric ID. And so they had to go ahead and bully them by locking their accounts. So this could be something we see everywhere at some point if people
What's
are not getting on board.
Yeah, but what's really interesting is Vietnam is a partner country to the BRICS nations. Now, I'm wondering, so on June the 13th, it announced that the administration of Vietnam as a partner country of the expanding economic growth. So they're not a full BRICS member, but they're a partner member. Now, I wonder if the push through for the biometrics and the bank accounts is the Bank of International Settlements, who fundamentally control all the banks, is them flexing their muscles to Vietnam, and using their control via the WEF and whoever to bring this system into Vietnam. Now, I wonder if it's part of something that could be of the BRICS nations, because China obviously has a digital system as well, or if it's a punishment for Vietnam and the Vietnamese people, or to them, for daring to potentially step away from the dollar dominance. There's more questions than answers in this particular situation, but either way, it's concerning and shows clearly that your bank account is not safe.
And that's going to be the central emphasis of our discussion today. Other ways, other possibilities in order to secure what you hold to be a value and to hold your value. So we all know assets is number one, holding money in assets, properties and things like that. And then Gary has talked about profusely in our videos prior, the importance of the sun's metal, which is gold, and the moon's metal, which is silver. And of course, Venus's metal, which is copper as well, and then many others, palladium and many others that are doing well and that are much needed. So, and there's other ways too, like, I don't know how far we want to get into it, Gary, but like there's like not holding, a bank account, but something, there's other means, right? Other kind of banks
Yeah,
that
yeah,
are different.
yeah,
And yeah, there's other means and yeah, that's all I'll say for now.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, certainly in the UK, most of the bills that we get, if you don't pay direct debit, you can get a paper bill come through, and you can go to the post office with cash and you can pay those bills. But it's getting the cash in the first place, you know, you have to be paid via cash. And obviously, the government has really clamped down on that kind of thing. So, generally, anybody who works has to have a bank account in which their money's paid into. And this is kind of the perversion as well that I see from bank accounts. When you understand that any money that you have inside a bank is not owned by you, but owned by the bank itself. So let's make this very clear. Money you have in the bank is not your money. It's the bank's property. And you are classed as an unsecured creditor to the bank. So when you work for a month and your money gets paid into the bank, your wages are not actually your own, they're the bank's. And so that is kind of the definition of slavery, where you would work for no payment because the payment goes to a third party that you have no control over because they can shut your accounts whenever they want, which is for me something that's been a huge concern for a good while now. And the UK government has changed the law for over 65s just recently, the beginning of September or mid September, where any money over £500, you have to give a reason for or ask permission to withdraw your money. So a working person whose wages are paid into a bank, and remember you can't retire till you're around 69, 70 currently in the UK, means that a working person whose bank, who gets, their money paid into the bank, would have to ask the bank's permission to withdraw their own funds. That's an interesting concept and one that's passed many by, but for me, very concerning, especially when we're talking about what's happened in Vietnam and what happens all over. I mean, certainly certain politicians in the UK have had their bank accounts shut down. And I actually know of a businessman who luckily had a secondary account with another company, and this was Santander. And they went into the bank to deposit the takings, the cash from their business, all above board. You know, no monkey business going on here. Funny business. It was all above board. They went into Santander to pay the cash in from the week's takings, and Santander informed them at the counter that they had closed their account on them because Santander did not want to be accepting cash. That's very, very interesting.
What
Luckily,
does
they
that
had,
mean? You didn't want to be accepting cash.
yeah,
You have to give cash. That's what you've earned. How do you not give cash to a bank?
you tell me. But obviously, Santander said that there'd been letters sent to them and hadn't they received them? And of course, Santander hadn't sent any letters to them whatsoever. They just shut the account down, a business account. Luckily, they had a secondary business account with another bank and were able to pay that money in and their takings into them. And the balance, which was quite a substantial balance, which was in Santander, was then transferred into their secondary bank account.
Oh, so they were able to because they had a second bank account. Fascinating.
Yeah, with a
So
dip
that
by
wasn't.
different company, different company, and but it just shows you the fragility of the system, you know. And obviously in the UK, most of the branches in the UK have been shut down now. So, most people have to travel 5 or 10 miles to their nearest branch, at least. So, tricky times. But yeah, so when you get paid, you don't own your money, and you have to ask permission to get your money out.
And
Um,
so what you're talking about, this can spread everywhere. It's like a fire that can spread everywhere.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Speaking about fires, there was one U.S. citizen in protest who decided to play with matches in Washington, D.C. about a year ago. And he was protesting about exactly what what we're talking about. Just the whole element of these systems where it's a bubble on top of a bubble, a Ponzi scheme of sorts. And how it's almost like also like a musical chairs thing, right? Because no one knows when these bubbles are going to pop, but someone knows because they got to make sure they got a chair when the music stops. And so they're going that what they do is they funnel money through companies and they funnel money through crypto and they funnel money through this and that. And the money's what's moving through. And so we never know when it's going to be a bank that's going to collapse, a specific cryptocurrency, all the cryptocurrencies, we don't know. We're not in the know. We're not seeing where the money's going. And because that's the pattern of this Fibonacci sequence. It's a circle, and so the energy is moving through, but there's no source for it. It doesn't ground into the earth. It's not a natural system. So it's just circling and circling and circling, and at some point there's nothing. It's disappeared. Whatever money there was is gone.
Yeah,
And we're all left with insolvency and bankruptcy and crashes and our money having, higher and higher inflation rates. And that's what just happened with Argentina on what me and Gary were predicting in September for the second September eclipse, that there's going to be some financial evidence of another crash of sorts. And sure enough, on the morning of September 22nd, Argentina's currency deflated about 10%, was it, Gary?
yeah, 10%. Yeah, yeah.
So
22nd, 23rd. Yeah. I think they pumped something like $100 billion or something stupid like that into, or hundreds of billions of dollars into trying to keep the country afloat. And I think they just about managed it. But to lose 10% of the currency value overnight on an already rocky currency with high um, inflation or debasement um, is not going to be good for the Argentinian people.
and the eclipse happened about, well, what time it happened in Argentina, I didn't double check, but it happened around the eclipse. And so what I was saying in that video was that usually when an eclipse occurs, there's something happening, but we can't see what's happening because the sun is being shadowed. So we don't know the full outcome yet of what occurred. All we know is what we were told. All we know is what everyone experienced there. And obviously, things are happening elsewhere too. So the evidence, the imprint of this eclipse imprints any time the other planets hit this special and significant point of 28 degrees, 29 degrees Virgo. And on December 21st, so it's going to hit all the solstices and equinoxes from this point on for the next year. And so that's when we'll see more and more evidence of what occurred, what was hidden, and what springs out of it. And so the next big hit will be the square to the sun in Sagittarius on and around December 20th and December 21st, because the eclipse will have squared that point, and that point will imprint and amplify whatever effects occurred that we did not see during the September 21st solar eclipse. And the same will go for the September 7th total lunar eclipse. And we'll see those effects, continuing from now, but also really powerfully on December 7th. So we're looking at a mirror between September 7th and September 21st and December 21st and December 7th. So we're reporting to you what happened on the world stage, but there are other things that imploded and occurred on both dates that we are not privy to, that we're not being made aware of. And because that's the nature of an eclipse, we don't know what there was an implosion of sorts, but it's not free and clear to see the after effects till later.
Yeah, yeah. But the fact that we were able to give a date fundamentally and something of major importance happened is pretty impressive, you know. Um, Not wishing to pat our own selves on our backs, but I think that was quite an amazing call to be able to especially with Meten's ability to interpret the charts and the 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 sort of like the way that we both look at the finances and come to the conclusion that something was going to occur. And obviously, we were very cautious in the way we said it because how many times can you say a date and get it wrong? But it was very clear that there were the potential for, and the eclipse of the 23rd generally has always been a time of collapses in the past, you know. So again, you have to take the past history. But a little bit of further information about Argentina, because I think it's far bigger story than we're being told. Initially, United States said they would support Argentina and bail them out and there'd be no problem. And then a day or so later, America stepped back very quickly. And where we are with that at the moment, I don't know. But something I do know is that Argentina has got the third largest IMF bailout currently in the financial system. I don't know who number one and number two are, but Argentina has got the third largest IMF bailout currently. Now, the IMF is actually part of the Federal Reserve or controlled by the Federal Reserve, which is again controlled by the BIS, Bank of International Settlement. And how the IMF works is that they get a group of countries to secure loans to that country. And that country then has to pay those loans back with interest. And those countries that have um, backed those loans gets a percentage of the interest. But obviously, the country that's getting those loans from the IMF is also subject to whatever terms and conditions the IMF sees fit, whether that be a digital ID, shutting certain people's bank accounts down, or making them hop on one leg. It's literally whatever they decide they will do. Okay. Now, obviously, the hop on one leg is kind of the comedy aspect of the fallacy of this. Now, the problem we have with Argentina going pop in the way they did is if Argentina can't pay their loans back and they default to the IMF, it means the countries that lent or backed those loans to the IMF to Argentina are then left carrying the baby. And what we know currently within the world finances is that none of the G7 countries, if they are, and I suspect they are fully involved in part of this IMF bailout situation, have the ability to absorb any kind of losses when, for instance, France, United Kingdom are literally banging on the door of the IMF requiring their own bailouts. Germany as well now. I think last time we talked about the job situation and the manufacturing collapse in Germany. And I think in 1 month, 125,000 manufacturing jobs were lost in Germany.
Wow. Yeah,
So
Argentina is the biggest debt to the IMF.
biggest now, is it? Right.
Looks like it's number one now. Two is Armenia. Three looks like Bahamas. No, this is not in the correct order. No, sorry. These are just examples. No, yeah, it looks like Argentina has the highest.
Yeah.
It's not giving me an order of one, two, three, four, five.
But
No,
funded
Egypt. Sorry, Egypt is the second. Sorry,
is it?
Egypt.
Oh, Egypt second, right?
Argentina is one and Egypt is number two.
And we know that Egypt several years back had a colour revolution, didn't they? And the colour revolution would have allowed how can we put this? I should imagine there was a three-letter agency that was involved in the colour revolution of Egypt that then
Mhm.
allowed the collapse of the country for the IMF to come in to then control the politics and policies of that country for the good of the people. And being British, I can be very sarcastic at times, and the good of the people was sarcasm. Now, Argentina is too big to fail because if Argentina truly does crash it will take the world finances out. And in retrospect, it could be that we get the clarification of that, as Meten said in December, that that actually was the first domino that fell, and the contagion of that caused what could be and is definitely going to be coming at some point in the future. Because without doubt, with the Fibonacci sequence based on nothing, the collapse or a debasement or hyperinflation is coming to many, many countries, particularly the Western countries, the G7. So whether it's the first domino or not, I don't know, but it certainly raises huge, huge questions, you know, huge questions.
Oh, update. Ukraine has overtaken Egypt to become the IMF's second largest debtor.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yep, a lot of sense.
Because again, we know that BlackRock and other companies are in there who have purchased parcels of land or have given them loans for parcels of land or mineral rights, which the country R now holds that land within their borders currently.
Save
And
its own country and have to sell its country? Wow.
so I believe BlackRock has started to pull out of Ukraine because of the losses, because that land is no longer controlled by Ukraine.
Wow.
And I know that the United Kingdom in January last year signed a 200 200 billion deal with Ukraine for part of the mineral rights that it already sold to BlackRock, as well as control of the ports. And United Kingdom is giving Ukraine 2.5 billion annually to control the port access on three of the big ports in Ukraine. Now, the United Kingdom is obviously a PLC, it's a private limited company, not owned by the British people or the people of the United Kingdom in any way, shape, or form, and is actually controlled by the Khazarian mafia or the bankers, the banksters, we could say, which then links up to the BIS. It's a very wicked web that they weave, and all the financial institutions are fully interconnected with everybody else.
The next country after that is Ecuador and then Pakistan. And I say this for the interest of everyone here because if these countries owe the biggest debts, what does that mean for their current economies and their current political maneuvering? And what could it mean in the future?
Very, very valid point there.
Because to see that the first country is Argentina and that country just went through a collapse, in a sense, and to see that the second biggest debtor is the Ukraine, which is not a surprise either. Those are two countries that have been in the headlines. Argentina has had way more than one collapse. And then now we're seeing Ecuador, but I haven't heard much in the news about Ecuador. Maybe I haven't listened. But Pakistan has definitely been in the news in relationship with India and other war factors. So that's interesting.
It's very interesting that Pakistan has just signed a deal with Saudi Arabia for joint protection from a certain country in the Middle East, a certain small country in the Middle East beginning with I. And Pakistan has nuclear weapons. And so, whatever financial deal has been done with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, Saudi Arabia now has the backing of Pakistan and their nuclear arsenal and protection from a small country named I. And this all came about very recently because the small country named I attacked Qatar and Doha and bombed the capital when that country had spent 63 billion, given 63 billion to the United States of America for protection against that very thing. And United States of America stood by and allowed it to happen.
That's very strange. After offering protection and then all of a sudden just allowing it to happen.
Well, it makes you not wonder or question, but it's quite it shows who controls who really in many ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the tail wags the dog is a saying in England. I'm sure that resonates around the world with all our viewers who are watching us. Um,
There's also a film called Wag the Dog.
is there
It's an old American film. It's with I think it's with Robert De Niro. Yeah, Wag the Dog, and it's about political maneuvering, like that we're speaking of.
interesting?
I haven't seen it in a long time, so I'd have to watch it again.
So, Meten, before we get much further, have you got a couple of charts that we can look at for either confirming the 23rd of September so we can just quickly go over and just say, look, this is what we saw, and then potentially what we've got coming up? Because obviously we're at the end of September now, and October is going to be coming in, isn't it? And so there are some interesting charts, I believe, that you let me just allow that that you were talking about, and it'd be really good to show where we're at.
Let me just make this larger. So just to go over real quick for you guys, the eclipse that occurred recently on Sunday, September 21st. I'm sure everybody felt it. But usually you'll feel it a couple days before, as the impacts are usually Friday and Saturday before that Sunday that it occurred. And if you look here, you see the most significant standing out kind of factor here in this chart is these red lines. We see a blue triangle and we see these red lines like over and over again from this point here to this point here. And so we're looking at this polarity tension between the Aries vortex with Saturn and Neptune on the Aries 0 degree axis of the world, axis mundi, beginning of things, in opposition to where the sun and the moon, at a sign though, but still in opposition to the 29-degree sun and moon, Virgo eclipse. And then Mercury's there too already in Libra. And so this is an opposition. This is like a moment of heightened tension, where on one side you have this implosion, this eclipse, which is like a a power outage, but no one knows exactly what is lost because in a power outage everything goes dark. And so in that darkness of the eclipse, we still don't know all that has been lost or destroyed. And so on the other side, it's in tension with what we're trying to start, what's trying to be reset and begun anew. And so to have this tension means that our ability to move forward, there are some things that have not been worked out. And so obviously the monetary systems are struggling in the way forward with a lot of tension and a lot of countries going in different directions and new alliances being built. Because what's actually occurring is that as we attempt to move forward, as these new economic financial systems attempt to move forward, there are things happening in the foreground. There's the surface stories, and things happening in the background. There's all these power maneuvering and plays occurring. And so something occurred on the 21st that we don't know about. And it stifled our ability to move forward. And it's like Saturn giving a reality check to the countries and the leaders of the world. Like, okay, we want to move forward, but what about this? Did we take care of this? Did we take care of that? And so this is a slow, gradual process as any changes. And as I've said many times on my channel, the Aries vortex will not be solidified until spring of next year. So it steps forward and it steps back. And Saturn has to check all those steps. It has to check, is this valid? Is this practical? Saturn brings in the reality checks and Neptune's the dream. Oh, we want to bring in this digital ID system for the whole world and everyone, you're going to love it. And I don't know, maybe we won't. Moon does rule the people. So the moon is like, I don't know. Maybe we don't want to have total control over us in a digital surveillance system. So maybe we're fighting that. And maybe this polarity, this opposition between the Aries vortex and the eclipse is symbolizing our protests of a new overarching, dominant total control AI grid system that videos everything and controls us in every way imaginable, because it won't be people that's controlling, it will be people that are setting up this system to control us. So it's what it is. It's like for those of you who've studied the philosopher Foucault, who came up with the idea of the panopticon, which is the system that regulates itself and makes sure that everything is being visible and everything's recorded. Basically, an AI panopticon system that sees everything and through seeing everything controls it. And Gary and I spoke about this in an older video when we talked about the whole quantum mechanics axiom of, whether, remember, Gary, you're talking about how when we see a particle, it's a particle, but when we look away, it's something else. It's
Yeah.
something that cannot be controlled, cannot be put into an image. So it's this idea that if you can record everything in the world, everything that's happening, then you can control it. Because once a video eye can see it, it somehow catches it, imprisons it in an image.
Solidifies it, doesn't
Right.
it?
Yeah, whereas when we live in a world where we're not being perceived, we're in movement. Everything's in movement. But so it's like there's something to photography and imagery and catching a human being in an image as a fixed image and catching it there as something that can be seen and identified. Oh, that's you. That's an image of you. I don't know about you, but like in the early native languages, they didn't really use nouns. They only used verbs because there was no such thing as a walker or a biker or this or that. There was only movement and biking and there was only verbs because we as human beings were action oriented. There's no such thing as like we're just one thing. We are what we are relative to what we're doing at any given time. There's no real difference between space and time. It's all a cycle. It's all the natural movement of life is a cycle, is movement. Okay, I was starting to get philosophical there, so I'm gonna stop
It's
myself.
brilliant. No, I love it, love it. But as you can see from the chart from September, um, we were able to show this contrast and what could be, and from historical events of collapses previously, the eclipse had always been a period which had been associated with that kind of thing, and so we highlighted it, and you know, and I think we were right to highlight it and show because there's far more going on that we can understand as Meten's already said, and we're not in the club. We're just just trying to pull the veil back a little bit and have a little peek to see if we can see anything that could help um the viewers make you guys and girls making an informed choice about what you think you should be doing, and again, this isn't financial advice what we're giving in any way, shape, or form. We're just explaining what we're seeing, and we're giving you scenarios and stories of what's been, so that you can make informed choices about what you feel is best. Because certainly the current system is not serving. It's not serving in any way, shape, or form. So So shall we look at the October charts and then or do you want to pull for a break? I mean, I think it's probably been what, 40 minutes, half hour, something like that, and do it in two parts, or is it a bit too soon at the moment, Matem? What do you
I
feel?
thought we were going to do an hour and
Yep,
then a
yep,
second.
yep, yeah. Well, we're
Let's do
nearly halfway through already, so
Okay, let's do just one more chart then, and then we'll save the October 31st for the second hour. Let's just do
yeah,
the
that's
new.
brilliant. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so here we go.
So we're now going to be looking at um two
Oh,
periods
oh,
in October, and the 21st of October um is a key point, and again we're looking at um new moons and what could be coming from this, which is really important as we move forward.
okay, so the first thing that stands out for me is we want to look at that it's a new moon. So this is not, no, sorry, this is the wrong chart, or I'm looking at the wrong chart. Hold on. Okay, can you see the chart at all, Gary?
Yeah, yeah, I can see it.
You can see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so here we have the new moon chart, and this is for October 21st. So this will be in about 3 weeks. And what you can see right away in this chart is there looks to be a blue triangle. Can you see that blue triangle, Gary?
Yes, I can.
That blue triangle is a water trine. That means we have planets in every single water sign. We have Jupiter in Cancer at 24. We have Saturn in Cancer at 26, along with the North Node. And we have Mars in Scorpio, conjunct Mercury in Scorpio at 20. So we have a pretty close, well, not that close, but moving close as Mars and Mercury will move up to 26 degrees Saturn, and so will Jupiter as Saturn continues to go retrograde. And so we have this grand trine, and this particular new moon is going to be in the sign of Libra. And so you can see the moon here and the sun here at about 20. This is a little past because the moon is a couple hours past, as the moon should be 28 with the sun. So we have a new moon in Libra, which is a new beginning. And this new beginning, Libra is ruled by Venus. Venus rules our finances. So this will be another step, another huge step towards implementation of a new financial economy. So just like with the September eclipse, we'll likely see models, whether continue to be Vietnam or the UK or other countries, we'll start to see clear how these models are working in these countries that are first having proposed and are now attempting to push it on the citizenry. And so there we are with the new moon there. And the other major factor is the Grand Trine, as I spoke of. Now, that Grand Trine is an opportunity for things to happen very quickly and easily. And it doesn't mean they're great things that could happen. It just means when there's a trine, there's an ease by which the energy moves. And so with Jupiter, and let me go over this real quickly as I like to do in every time we do geopolitical astrology. I'm just going to give a quick reminder for the meanings of each planet, and we'll go by it through the trine. So, with the new moon in being the sun and the moon conjunct, the sun stands for our leaders, leaders of nations, and so that's them making a decision, a new decision for the people, because the moon stands for the homeland, the protectors, those who take care of each country that those that which that how we keep countries safe, and the protectors of that country. So it's the leaders and the protectors of each country which are creating a new beginning during that time. And then the new moon is actually in square to Jupiter. And Jupiter is right here in Cancer, part of the grand trine. And so there's an inner tension happening between what the leaders want to do and what Jupiter is saying. Now, Jupiter represents the courts, the judges, the law, the educators, the religious leaders, the diplomats, the moral standards, the laws, and those who influence the nation's beliefs. So it's also, to some degree, representative of the people. And we have Jupiter in tension with what the leaders are doing. So obviously, we're not agreeing with everything that's being done and all these new transitions that are occurring. And that energy is actually going to be supported by the Aries vortex with that trine. And the Aries vortex is Saturn and Neptune. And Neptune is it's the new vision. Sometimes a religious vision, sometimes a spiritual vision. In this case, we're being subverted by this total vision of faux monist kind of fascist undertaking of putting everyone in the world under one system. Obviously, that's extremely dominating and controlling. And Neptune can lend itself to that vision. And Saturn right next to it can try and solidify that vision. And then the third part of that trine is Mars and Scorpio having passed that square with Pluto, which was very, very, violence related and power ridden. But now it's with Mercury. So with Mars conjunct Mercury, the mind is moving quick and fighting quickly what it doesn't like. So a lot of tension during this new moon, it looks to me, Gary, a
Yeah.
lot of tension on this particular new moon attempt to bring in a new financial beginning. And I mean, this is, again, we've said this over and over again. It's happening in layers. So this is just another step that they're going to try and bring in at this time. And it makes sense. New moon in Libra, Venus ruling the finances. This is another major step towards their intended goals. And when I say they, I mean all the country's leaderships, because they're all connected. They all just want to do it their own way, but they're still all looking in the same direction, and that's total control.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I find it very interesting. It's a water trine, and obviously, when we start talking about money, we're talking about liquid assets, flow, the bank. The river bank is the bank, isn't it? You know, so the symbology of our language also connects very much with the financial institutions, also connects into the trine, and so I don't believe in coincidences these days, obviously, because you just don't see it in that way. And the fact that we have this push and this pull, there's clearly people are unhappy at this point. There's things going on, and did you say they're going to get a little bit of clarity during this period?
It's what it is. It's like it's a next level implementation of these new economic financial control systems.
Right.
And intention with that will be what other people, other leaders think, and religious and spiritual leaders, and us too, like different visions of it, are going to be in tension and fighting with that. Not everyone's on the same page. Some people are looking at the same ending to the book, but they're on different pages.
Yeah.
Because all these countries, as you've said, as you've spoken of, we have the BRICS countries. We have the countries that are controlled and owned by the IMF. We have the G7 countries. We have countries that are really strong and independent, like the I country, like China, like Russia, like the US. So
Yeah.
obviously, they're all fighting each other all the time, but they all want the same, but they all want the book to end on the same note, if that makes sense.
Yes, it
They're
does.
all looking for something. So we we have a say in this. We is more symbolized by Uranus and the moon than anything else, but still somewhat by Jupiter, we are also, they have to test our voice and what we feel and think and how we respond and how react. And so this new moon will be in tension with us. It'll be in tension because that Gemini and Mars is creating it in conjunct, I think. So there are tensions all around, and all of us have a new vision. And so all of us have our own version of the Saturn Neptune, kind of beginning of Aries. All of us have a new vision in Aries, as I spoke of many times before. And so it's just what version of this vision is going to occur for the world at large is what we're waiting to see, and we won't see clearly until next spring.
Right. So we have the moon and the sun conjunct, you said, wasn't it? Or they're in
Correct, correct, correct. That's
conjunction.
what a new moon is. That's what a new moon is. Yeah.
So the moon is silver and the sun is gold. If they're conjunct with each other, does that mean, in the way this chart looks currently, does that mean that there could be significant moves or something going on with gold and silver because of, as in, like it's a new moon? So could this be another springboard of something like the silver within the gold of the sun? I'm just thinking out loud here, but maybe you can put sort of,
Okay.
if I'm wrong
So,
or
no, that was great because I wanted to bring this up and I forgot. So, what it is historically, September is always a sideways month where gold and silver and, in more recent history, crypto and in longer history, stock markets, like all of these investment resource, they always go sideways in September. And then all of a sudden in October, there's usually a rise in the second 2 to 3 weeks in. And, rarely, but also historically, we have crashes in October, as you and I went over, historically a while back in the early finance videos we did. And while that's the case, there's still always a buildup. So, especially with this grand trine and this new moon in Libra for finances, I'm seeing crypto rising up, silver continuing to rise up, and gold continuing to rise up, which is almost antithetical to, the usual state of affairs because usually we experience like an up and down in September, rises in October, but they're not always consistent and it's not all the time. But as it's looking now, and perhaps because of the financial instability, and the distrust of dollars, of paper currencies, of these derivative systems, it seems like gold and silver are making leaps and will continue to make leaps. Now, ironically, with crypto, which again is a derivative, it's like, what is it? Digital gold is what they say, digital silver. Bitcoin being digital gold to like XRP being digital silver. Um, but really it's symbolic of Mercury and Bitcoin's more symbolic of Saturn. But some people argue it's symbolic of the sun. So it looks like things are rising. Now, as it goes, things never rise forever. So it looks to me like there'll be a buildup and a crash in October. And I don't mean a big crash, just a crest of a wave, because it looks like things will continue to go up for both cryptocurrencies and gold and silver. Crypto is a little more risky because, where are you holding your crypto? Who's holding your crypto?
yeah,
Are you holding it as an exchange? And if you want to make money off it, how are you going to sell it if it's not on an exchange? Do you have Caleb and Brown holding your crypto? Do you have, you know what I mean? Like, and good luck trying to find out exactly how that works because there's no one to talk to when you call them up to say, how are you going to do things? It's just such, everything's a fucking secret these days. You
yeah.
can't get perfect clarity on how to really hold your assets, in full power. It's meant to be that way, it seems.
I mean, the feeling I get from your description of this chart, I just wanted to get clarification on the moon and the sun. And obviously I'm not into crypto in any way, shape, or form. And we will in our second part go more into crypto because Meten's got quite a bit to say on that, and it's really interesting. But that's not my strong point, so I don't ever talk about it. I observe it, but I don't really understand it enough to want to warrant to talk about it. But my feeling from this chart is that we're going to see gold and silver particularly continue its climb, and the conflict that we could particularly see, and you said conflict between the people potentially and the governments. Well, this conflict could actually be the debasement of the fiat currency as the fiat currency starts to crash in dollar terms against the gold and silver. Because as the gold and silver rises, it's very likely that the Fed's going to have to start printing money at some point. And this is going to cause huge amounts of disruption and debasement within the dollar, and it's also going to cause political wranglings within every country because the dollar bonds that they're all holding are going to be devalued and worthless and less and less and less. And so these countries are going to want to dump their dollar debt derivatives and purchase gold and silver while they still can before the jig's up. And for me, this is the feeling I get from this chart.
This is pretty clear. I haven't seen a chart this clear for a while. I mean, it's like new moon with ruling planet Venus, another leap in the financial vision of what they and what we want to see, and kind of just clarity on what has real value. Because what has real value is going to show its real value. And how can having a bank account have any value if you just observed a whole country have their banking system locked up until someone gives up their data, and then all of a sudden they could have it back?
That's the nub of the point, and also with the continued growth, and on part two I will get more into gold and silver because there's some very interesting things that are going on currently with gold and silver, particularly gold. Um, but it looks like, and the financial analysts that I'm observing and watching are all saying that gold and silver hasn't even begun to rise. Now, I know from my research in the past that when particularly silver reaches a certain price, and we're pretty close to it now, that certain bullion banks are going to start struggling to cover their shorts. Stroke, if people want to cash in, those bullion banks could be low on fiat currency to cover those debts. And the only way to do that for them to get out of trouble is to create the money out of fresh air, which is what they've always done. But by creating huge amounts of extra money out of fresh air, further debases the currency, the fiat currency, as well as the Fed or the Bank of England having to go and print lots more money to keep the liquidity of the finance and the currencies going around within the grand water trine.
Wow. The wheel of that trine. Yeah, yeah, this is going to be super clear. I mean, this can't be more crystal clear, this chart, with the energy moving through, like you said, like you picked up on that metaphor, that obviously the financial, words that are used to describe everything is water. Even like the whole speech of the trip to moon was nautical based, right? It was like a voyage to the moon on a ship, on a not on a spaceship, but on a sea ship.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a realm of water. Not to light everyone up on what kind of world we live in, but
Well, we live under maritime law, and whether we like it or not, we live under the Venetian Knights Templar version of the maritime law, and our finances are under exactly the same thing. You know, you go to the bank, well, that's the river bank, and the teller tells you where the current where your gold and silver is hidden in the bank. That's what a teller does.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then obviously if you go bankrupt, the currency, the river, the water flows out of the bank and leaves you high and dry.
So crazy.
You know, it's all there. It's all there.
So,
What a trip. So
I mean, yeah, and another way of looking at this is like this is like these are three water leaks in the chart. This is like the money leaking out, you know?
yeah,
Every single water sign, Jupiter's like too much money. Mercury and Mars is like trying to hold itself, defend its money, hold its money, it's trying to create its boundary. And then the Aries vortex is a big void where all the money's, somehow the money's disappearing in someone's wallet, we
yeah.
can't see where. Wow.
This you know and again this links on because being a month after the 23rd fundamentally, and what we've seen going on this last few weeks, and on part two I've got some real bombshells to come in on this as well because it gets even worse. The financial system, it gets even worse in part two. I'm really going to be dropping some bombs. Shall we stop sharing for a second then, and we'll sort of wrap up this part one? That's all right, Meten? Superb. So, I mean, that chart's actually giving me flesh of the goosebumps, because it's that important. And I think we really are onto something really, really, really powerful there. And and certainly in part two with the other charts, and there's I've got some real golden gems to come out, and and we've got you know crypto to talk about a bit, and obviously we're going to finish off with something a guy called Max said. So don't play with matches, everybody. And
Yeah.
we're really gonna start to see some real meat on the bones in part two. So have you got anything else to say before we wind up on the 21st chart? Are you quite happy with that?
No, we're good. In the next video, we'll tackle the October 30th date, 31st Halloween date, because I want to look at people are talking about the Schumann resonance being really, really charged on that day. And then we'll look at that first eclipse um, date, after effect date but two dates, both
Yeah,
December 7th and December 21st.
yeah.
See
And
what's
say,
going
like I
on.
say, we've got some really interesting more and more information still to come on the show for part two. So join us shortly, and we'll see you very, very soon. So love, light, and blessings, everybody. Bye bye.